Hello and welcome to the Magical Witchy World TV. I am Star Ravenhawk.
And I am Rhonda Allen. Welcome back, everyone. Happy to have you with us this week.
And tonight,
And to,
Magical Witchy World panel is discussing the topic of mental health in our magical community.
hold on while we share a little video.
It's a magical, witchy world.
All right. It's good to have everyone back with us. Okay. Rhonda.
Well, welcome, everyone. We acknowledge that this is a really broad topic, and we have a diverse group of panelists with us tonight. We want to thank each and every one of you for joining us again. Many of your faces are very familiar to the audience here,
Yeah.
but we wanted to invite you all. First of all, thank you. And I'm going to hand it off to Star for some introductions.
All right. So what we're going to do right now is we'll begin with having each of you give a brief introduction of yourself. So let's begin with Phoenix Coffin Williams.
Hi, my name is Reverend Phoenix Coffin Williams. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor here in the state of New York. I am the first priest regent of the Corellian Nativist Church of Wicca and the chief priest of the Temple of Holistic Knowledge here in Buffalo, New York. And I'm in private practice. That's how I feed myself.
Thank you. Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina Wilkie, Dr. Christina Wilkie Burbach. I am a transpersonal psychologist. I have 25 years of experience in mental health. I've worked in every facet from corrections to inpatient to outpatient family. I have a bachelor's in psychology, a master's in clinical psychology, a PhD in health psychology, and postdoc training in transpersonal psychology. And I'm also in private practice, and I specialize in spiritual awakening. So are you having a mystical experience or mental health?
All right. And Jerry Brigante.
Hello, I'm reporting from the middle of Manhattan. I am a Master's of Social Work and Master's of Science and Disaster Resilience Leadership candidate at Tulane University with a certificate in collective trauma. And I do have a clinical background. I'm currently doing direct clinical inpatient, and I'm also a death doula and a community advocate in the non-traditional relationship space.
Awesome. Thank you. Joanne Gajewski.
Hi, my name's Joanne Gajewski. I am currently have a bachelor's in education, and I have worked with autistic and neurodiverse populations. I've been doing that for probably about 10 years. I switched over to clinical mental health, where I am getting my master's and getting my hours for licensing. I work with at-risk youth in the community, and my specialty is I am a trauma specialist that focuses on crisis intervention, PTSD, complex trauma, and everything under that
Okay.
category.
All right.
That's
Thank you so
fabulous.
much. Before we begin with some of our topics, we wanted to let you know that we will also be paying attention to the chats. So if we see any of you would like to add to some of our discussion or have a question that we could possibly answer, we will try to do the best we can. All right.
Yeah,
All right. Go
absolutely.
ahead, Rhonda.
So, first of all, again, you guys, you're bringing a lot
To the table.
to a lot of experience, a lot of clinical experience, education, everything to the table. So, we again really truly appreciate you coming forward to join us on this panel discussion. The one of the topics that we just wanted to start with is just the broad topic of destigmatizing mental illness and some of your thoughts, perhaps if you have some reflections on where we stood just even 5, 10 years ago to where we are today, post COVID, post isolation, anything you might want to say on that topic, we'd really like to start and open the floor with that.
Yeah.
Who would like to go first?
And you can raise your hands, or anything like that, or just let us know and you can begin. Okay. Go ahead.
So my belief is that all emotions are sacred and there's no such thing as like a bad emotion. And I think it's really important to emphasize that when we're feeling all these powerful emotions, to go ahead and experience it and move through it. To me, I think the most important thing is how are you channeling those emotions? How are you working with them? And I have found for me, like personally and professionally, that art and music and dance and movement and meditation are really powerful ways to express those emotions and feel them and move through them. And I think it's really important that people know that it's okay to experience all these emotions and just to move through them, that they're sacred.
All right. Thank you. That was what really wonderful said. Go ahead, Johan.
I'm along the same lines as Christina. We're human. We all have emotion, and that's okay. It's what you do with that emotion. I tend to use a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy, which uses a lot of mindful practices, somatic healing like Tai Chi, yoga, art therapies, things like that, journaling, ways to have people relate to their emotions and their trauma. So, like Christina said, they can work through it and feel better. It's a holistic alignment of body, mind, and spirit, for me when I work with people. And mostly I work with adolescents from the ages of 14 to 22.
Okay. Sounds
Excellent.
great. Thank you. Okay. Phoenix, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I mean, I'm sorry, it's so loud. I think that there definitely is a key about being able to name the emotion or recognize the emotion so that you can dance with it, so to speak, so that you can regulate it. One of the key things that I've sort of noticed post COVID is the self diagnosis. And I'm sure that my clinical friends have noticed that too. It is wonderful that we are now talking about all of this stuff and being more open about it. But I'm also seeing the other side of that, where people are seeing like TikTok or something like that, and they're like, "Oh, okay, well that makes sense. I'm now bipolar. I must be bipolar too,
Right.
or
Right.
whatever it is." Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually really interesting point because people self-diagnosing themselves and coming up with all these
Yeah.
things and saying, I am possibly this, and that. And you're like, because I've got all these symptoms, and that's not how it necessarily works. All
I
right.
see a lot of that too.
Yeah.
Where I work, as far as trauma, I get a lot of people. I have PTSD, and so when you get in it, well, I have all this on my plate. I'm like, that's more anxiety than it is trauma. Trauma is you've experienced a traumatic event or you have complex trauma over time, combat trauma. And with teenagers, your mother asking you to clean your room is not something that gives you PTSD.
Well said.
All right.
Phoenix, I think I saw
Phoenix,
your
yes,
hand come
Phoenix,
up
go
at one
ahead.
point.
Yes.
Yeah. So addressing destigmatization, decolonization, depathologizing mental health is absolutely essential to make a way for the work to happen. And I have been noticing that across generations, like newer generations they appear more apt or less afraid to approach mental health or the idea of wellness as a destigmatized way of thinking about it. I really do think that stigma arises from a lack of information and some confusion that turns into a lack of compassion, maybe even accidentally. I don't think stigma is necessarily done purposefully. However, refusing to address it in ourselves as a mental health community, like of practitioners, and then refusing to address it as like relatives of people who might have mental illness, and choosing to look at ourselves as people who could absolutely develop a struggle in this area due to literally any kind of stress that our world brings is going to be essential for making everyone just chill out and realize it doesn't necessarily have to be a sickness. We all just need individual things to be the fuck okay with this world.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well said.
Yeah.
Phoenix,
Rhonda,
I like how you said like whatever that word, pathologicalizing. To me, that's really important. Like, I don't label people at all. Like, that is something the field of transpersonal psychology doesn't do. And that's why I'm such a big fan of the terms like neurodivergent and neurotypical, because it takes away, I don't want to say like it lumps things together, but it takes away a lot of those labels. Because I know, like,
Yep.
personally for me, I have been like, I'm just not a fan of labels in a lot of ways, because I think sometimes you can never get rid of them. Like, for me, I've been in recovery from drugs and alcohol for over 18 years, but still in my medical chart, I have polysubstance abuse disorder in all my medical charts, and I'll never get rid of that label, even though I've been in recovery. So I know, like, sometimes when people get labels, they can't escape them. So they don't want to get the label in the first place, and that stops them from going and pursuing help. So I'm just a fan of the, I don't want to say necessarily newer terms, but more, to me, more empowering terms, like neurodivergent.
right, right. Did you have something to say about that as well, Rhonda?
I just I like the conversation and how we're speaking about I'm going to use the word deconstructing, or breaking things down into a smaller, perhaps more manageable concept. But then also using the conversation around labeling, and that can go from this topic to even our last panel discussions. I mean, labels become such heavy burdens that people then end up carrying, as you were saying, Christina. Like, you carry it with you through life, and it may have been something that perhaps, I'm going to use air quotes, that you were defined by at one point in time, but we are fluid beings, and we're not static. So hey, yes, thank you, this Phoenix.
Yes. So really, not to maybe jump into anything too soon, but I think one of the issues with labels is that it creates a binary for our identity. And as we are understanding, when it comes to human beings, binaries are not really that functional in helping us identify ourselves.
Right.
And so creating more of a spectral way of understanding things will help ourselves understand this is how identity is expressed.
Right.
It's not either or, it's this and.
Yes.
A lot of the things that one second, Christina, I'll get to you. One of the things that I've noticed that, to me, I mean, I'm not coming from that clinical side or master's degree or anything like that from you guys, but from the people that I work with, that I counsel with, a lot of them feel very bullied by the stigmatism of the media or social media. And when I say media, I mean the news, or like, a shooting happened, it's mental health illness, and it triggers a lot of the people that I counsel, because to them, they feel like they're being bullied, or they're being placed in boxes. Like, in general, actually, Phoenix mentioned something. He said, giving ourselves identities, and part of it is that a lot of them feel like they're being placed into little boxes by people, or by themselves, because we've come up with these things of where, okay, I've got this and that, so I've pigeonholed myself into that box. But we ourselves are also placing ourselves in these boxes based on maybe media as well as social media. And a lot of it is if we can destigmatize all of that, and stop, in a way that I could see it being considered bullying, because it's giving them these labels that they don't necessarily want to be identified with, because it makes them hate themselves. It does. I've seen it. I've witnessed it.
Absolutely.
And if we all are in some ways part of that, and we have to really destruct that, and find a way to nonstop educating people on it. And it feels like you're educating the masses, because no one seems to understand it properly, at least in the media or even on social media. And people love to use their labels to put blame on, to remove themselves from any responsibilities of things, or their actions and their deeds. And I'm like, you're not a child. If we are telling children how to conduct themselves and raise them in a certain way, and we make them responsible, why is it as an adult we are doing slightly different and finding all these things to pigeonhole and call ourselves the blame on, and lack of responsibility? So we go from being children being taught responsibility to adults who are like, I'm not responsible for this, it's because of this, this, and that. Makes no sense to me. But these are literally what I'm getting taught by the people that I counsel. And these are the things that I see as part of the whole stigmatism thing. I don't know if you guys see it that way too, because you're more clinically trained than I am, but this is what I see.
I mean, I don't think leading with labels in general is ever a particularly strength-oriented perspective to come at things, regardless of what label is. I think,
Right.
it really reduces us in terms of the scope of our humanity, even when, and not just neurotypical or neurodivergent, any label, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all very complex, holistic people who, fit a variety of intersections. And, I think, unless it's appropriate and there is a time and a place for those conversations to happen. But I think in general, when we're, just kind of leading with labels per se, it gets into dangerous territory. But I will, I guess, give the flip side of the coin, which is that I do know some people who have taken a little bit of solace in receiving a diagnosis, just because they were having some distress and, experiencing a lot of isolation and not really understanding, and knowing that there was a community or a word or, a way to help, be CBT or DBT or whatever therapeutic intervention, they might be going through with their support team. For some folks, certainly not all, but for some, it does become a source of comfort and, validation, like, oh, this isn't all in my head and it's not just me.
Right.
Well
Absolutely.
said.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I think that my beliefs are we can heal from our deepest wounds, and a label sometimes to me feels very permanent. Like I said, it's really hard to get rid of it, where I wonder, I believe, like, I feel like there hasn't been any major revolution in counseling or psychology in many years. And I feel focusing on symptoms versus labels and diagnoses is really the direction I would like to see mental health going in. Like, I think that normalizes it. Like, yeah, it's okay to feel sad. I'm having a shitty day. I'm having a stressful time at work, and work through those symptoms. And then, the symptoms implying it's a disease. It's just a temporary state of imbalance. You're not permanently broken. And once you receive that label, though I do agree with some of the things Jerry is saying, that sometimes having a label helps you understand what you're going through and you don't feel so alone. But I would personally just like to see the movement more towards addressing the symptoms versus, giving people permanent labels.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, it's interesting, even when you do get the label, like, I'm going to use my different things that's wrong with me. There's the lupus, and then there's, all these other things that were happening, the pain that was constant. And then someone says, I think you have fibromyalgia. And then it made me feel like, okay, so this is not in my imagination. I am feeling all these other excess pains. And that was it. That was where I ended it. And then I said, okay, so I'll come at it a different way. So I didn't reach out to necessarily a community. I was just glad to know that it wasn't just in my mind, but now I'm going to work at it a different way. I'm going to treat it differently than what I was doing before, to try to get the help for myself. So I think that's where you're going with it, right, Christina, in the sense of, it's good to get, and Jerry said the same thing. It's good to get the labeling of what it is, but then go from there with the symptoms and figure out what to do to help yourself, rather than use it as a blame thing.
I really, 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 so like, I've progressed majorly since I've been in the field of mental health, starting in clinical psychology and completely moving into holistic psychology, positive psychology, and now transpersonal psychology, which is a completely different way of looking at mental health. If you really look at some of these symptoms, none of them even really clearly fit in one label or another. Like, you could be having a mystical experience. You could be freaking out on acid. You could be having schizophrenia. So I think some of these don't even neatly fit under a label.
Right.
So
that's true. That is true. Yeah. What was
Phoenix,
that?
I see you have your
Phoenix?
hand up. We've had your hand up
Yeah.
for a minute here.
Yeah. I want to say that I think where the fields of psychology, clinical mental health counseling, social work, I think where, as a field, we really fucked up is when we tried to compare ourselves and model ourselves after a medical model, which forced us
Yes.
to
Right.
create these weird classifications and then try to quantify or measure these experiences in a way to create, boom, like here's this diagnosis, here's this
Right.
syndrome. This validates us because now we can treat an illness. And
Yeah.
so it's very masturbatory for the earlier pioneers of this field.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where the big issue comes in at, because, okay, I have noticed that very plenty of the people that I work with, they get some validation in knowing that they're not the only ones who have the struggles they have. And a diagnosis, if utilized appropriately, if talked about in a way that lets people know this is not like a permanent thing, like you're coming to therapy, you're coming to treatment for a transformation, right? So like, this is the thing, like people who have or experience this is kind of the tag that we put on them. This is what we use to describe it. This is how we have a common language to attack the demon that's attacking you, maybe. With the full expectation is that by the time we're done working together, if I'm worth half of shit of therapy, then you have to notice that there's a different name for how you're being now. Ending therapy or counseling in a way that helps people come up with a new name or a new identity for that healed part can be a very powerful way to do that. But the label has to be combated, right? I get paid based on the label that people have. And so destroying that label a complete and total part of the work is an ethical component for me. I can't have people leaving therapy with me thinking that they still have this label that kept them sick so long.
Right.
I think, like you said, labeling is very Western medicine based, and a lot of that is because you need a diagnostic code in order to prescribe them a medication or to even have insurance cover it. So, and I know so many people can't afford to pay out of pocket. Like, I don't take insurance, so that's like the luxury of what I do is I'm all self-pay, but that also limits some people from accessing certain services, especially from an alternative model because they don't have the insurance to pay for it. So I just think overall, not just moving out of the Western medicine model, but also different payment models for mental health will help destigmify it and make it more accessible. I think part of the stigma is a lot of people can't access mental health. Like a waiting list around here since COVID are like 500, 1,000 people on some of these wait lists just to see a therapist. So you might not see anyone for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
That actually leads to that next question we had on the on our list here, Star.
Yeah. Okay. So we kind of segue into normalizing the treatment and counseling, which kind of what you were saying, because you should be able to accept insurance, and for your
I want to accept insurance,
right? And you're not able to because of the type of counseling that you give, or the way that you practice it. And that should not be a limitation. It should be something that's considered the norm. It should be all normalized, and it should be, great to be able to know that, okay, I can go to counseling for this. Because if you look at different groups of people in general, there are literally lots of groups. I think even among Blacks, let's say, for instance, that a lot of us would not go to counseling because, no, we don't need such things. That's for other people. Or that's for other groups of people. It's the truth. I know for a fact I've seen that, because they don't consider that they don't think that they need that type of help. And everyone kind of does. What do you guys think?
Well, I don't want to accept insurance, first of all, because I think insurance is very limited. I have accepted insurance in the past, but I don't want to label people and I don't want to play the game. I'm definitely coming from a different paradigm of mental health. So I think it's up to me, with my social justice, for lack of a better word, and my ethics to have affordable services, to have a sliding scale, to offer like group services where people can pay a very affordable rate to see me in a group setting. So it's up to me. Like, I choose not to take insurance because I don't want to, but then I still make sure my stuff is affordable for everyone.
Right.
I think it's also, systematically, bringing it back around to decolonization, it's a fine line, right? Obviously we want people to be well trained. We don't want just anybody being able to toy around with trauma. We do want professionals who have received training in ethics and cultural humility and all of these things. But on the other hand, there is a huge gatekeeping, and when I think about the privilege that has allowed me to go back to grad school, I need 900 unpaid internship hours to get my degree. And, the reason that I'm able to do that is because I have a very strong support system financially and psychologically and emotionally that has enabled me to, work part-time and to do that. But obviously, that is not the case for a lot of people. So we have a really strong underrepresentation of mental health care professionals in a lot of communities.
Yeah, this is great.
Excellent point.
That's an
Excellent
point
point.
here too. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I have to say to that is I do take clients.
You do take clients. Yeah. I mean, this is we're touching on topics here, access to affordability of et cetera, which is key and critical.
Right.
Let me take the topic into a little bit of a different direction, and that is adding the discussion of complementary natural and magical techniques and tools for mental health and healing. For example, I read tarot professionally. That's my jam. I teach it. I present at conferences, etc. So my therapy, if you will, for clients is literally working through the cards. And there are licensed therapists who use tarot in their practices. So I'm just looking at other avenues, or since we're all magical practitioners here, do you include or incorporate or consider any of that training in your work, Phoenix?
Yeah, so I first want to address the hurt feelings I have, like living in multiple worlds, the hurt feelings I have at the world of psychology, now trying to validate the use of tarot cards in therapy. Like, if it's true now, it's always been true. And that, again,
Correct.
is so hold the fuck on. Put your cards down, get back in your lane. All right? Get back in your lane there. And it's a helpful technique.
Very.
Our spiritual techniques are equally as valid as a lot of the very basic forms of therapy we walk out of graduate school with before any of the specialized training we get. At the very least, a priestess, clergy for gender neutral terms, can teach circle breathing as a basic meditation technique. We can explore the impact of trauma across our lifespan in our own astral temples. Right? We can do these things, and it can be very effective, just like in systematic desensitization techniques and what have you. So there is value in the techniques that we have as magical people. There's always been value there. And I think the thing that we have done that's been foolish as magical people is try to get psychology and medicine to try to come around to our point of view. Because now they're in a place to appropriate it.
Ooh. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, he's calling them out
Yeah. To me, I think witchcraft and magic and psychology really intersect with the whole concept of empowerment. And honestly, I find, yes, I believe in cognitive therapy and reframing our thoughts, but I find more value in spiritual and metaphysical techniques. Yeah. In fact, that is 99% of what I practice as a transpersonal psychologist. And like you said, to me, the two most powerful healing techniques are meditation and journaling.
Yeah, meditation. I use meditation a lot.
And it trumps, to me, so many of these other modalities out there. Modalities where you need to go to a therapist every week and you become dependent on them because they don't teach you any of these tools to do it yourself.
Yes.
I think once you learn how to journal, journaling prompts, bullet journaling, whatever it might be, and how you learn how to meditate, I think those are incredibly empowering things that you can do on your own.
Yeah. Actually, a couple of my people that I counsel, they record my meditations as I'm doing it with them so that they can repeat it throughout the week or the 2 weeks before I see them again and things like that. And they would say how much it's helped them each time that they're going through whatever trauma it is. It helps them deal with it better and walk through it better. So they've gotten results with that. I don't know, but in terms of other people, like any other magical tools? I mean, I have myself, but I want to hear some of what you guys have. No, nothing else.
Well, I like I do. I absolutely believe tarot is a wonderful psychological tool.
Right, right,
I believe like the tarot is the hero's journey,
right.
like the major arcana. So I do a lot of what I would call tarot counseling. In fact, on my bookshelf, I have several tarot and psychology books. So I think
Right.
it's an incredible psychological tool. I
Right.
think rites of passage is also a really incredible magical psychological tool, whatever you want to call it. Herbalism, whether it's herbalism like using herbs to improve your mood or magical herbs, and aren't they kind of intersecting in any ways?
Together, like have it as a tool as you guys are doing it. Use it as a tool as they're doing it and things like that. Yes, Phoenix?
So I think that the term that's going around that you're describing, Dr. Wilkie Burbach, is indigenous medicine.
I mean, I don't necessarily use that term, but yeah.
So okay, right. So, but I think, yeah, like the herbs, like if it's a tea, it's a tea. If you're enjoying yourself with your plants, you're enjoying yourself with your plants. Right. If you make a dandelion ring and you have joy all day, then you did it.
Yeah.
Right.
So you bring like mindfulness into it too there too.
Yeah. One of the things that I have found that works really well for me, I don't know if it helps with a lot of other people, and when I taught a class on it and people and I mentioned what I use it for a mental health treatment, they were like, oh, I would love to try that. I use skull magic and use it for what it is. Like, I mentioned the frontal lobe and all the different things and what you can do magically with it to help yourself. And it works for people that I work it with, whether it's me, making them realize that they can do and activate a lot of things for themselves. Like if they're using the skull, a red skull or orange skull to begin with, at the frontal lobe, and you identify certain parts of it, because this is where your awakening is. This is where your control factor is. So to me, when I speak about skull sorcery and I'm telling them this is what I'm working with, and when I'm working with, I'm teaching that part, but when I'm counseling someone, I literally work with the skulls with the skull that I'm working with for them, and then I ship it out to them, and then they will burn it and they will work with it, and they will say how much that they cognitive of what they're doing and their actions, and how it helps them. To them, they get better control of themselves in that particular way. So it all depends. I find that works a lot.
And I think that speaks really powerfully to ritual.
Yes.
And if you are, if you believe, as I do, the divinity is within yourself, that your living is sacred, that goddess comes within you, then everything that you are doing within your day, if you're doing it mindfully, right, is ritual. If you're getting up and washing your face, doing your self-care in the morning, tending to your hair, doing these things, that is ritual, especially if you're doing it with elements of meditation or incantations or affirmations, right? Like we work with affirmations with our clients all the time.
Yes.
And so it's all interconnected, regardless if it's, quote unquote mundane or if it's a sacred ritual. We don't need to be casting the circle to be doing ritual. It can be very simple, like making the tea or you're working with the skull magic.
Yeah. Phoenix, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, so I think that right on down the line, if we all wanted to, right now, we could create a very legitimate model to use almost everything that we've encountered as magical spiritual people to impact our world. So when I say almost every technique, I mean astrology as both personality questionnaire, like not as a predictor or whatever, but literally just like as a semi-structured interview that gets people talking about what they feel their personality characteristics are, can function just like a long what's one of the 5-factor model? I can't think of it off the top. Yes, thank you. But like astrology very easily, and then further on down the line, astrology can continue to be used to help people plan how they want to structure their success over the course of time. I think that tarot can also be used to help people talk about what has happened to them historically when you have the card set in the past matrix. And then you move it to the present matrix. This is the impact, and it can be represented visually. And then when you shift into the future, it can be used to help people set goals and manifest their reality.
Right.
Laying on of hands is a really great way to help people experience compassion. It's also a great way to help people mediate what consent is. And that kind of magical touching. When it comes to our puppets and our dolls and our sympathetic magic, technique for technique, we can use it to restructure a thought. We can use it to help us accept some chronic pain or help us work on chronic pain. Like, this is real. So let's be creative about it. And I think that sharing this is going to be super important for helping a new generation of professionals kind of arise in the world.
Right.
I
Christina, go
Thinking
ahead.
back on what Phoenix is saying about astrology, in fact, I do an astrology, a reading or assessment, whatever you want to call, with every initial client at the first meeting. I think it is an amazing tool of self-awareness.
Okay.
Like to really not excuses, not to say like, oh, I'm this way because my planet is in that house or because but for understanding and awareness, like, oh, people who tend to have this planet there tend to have these sort of traits. So I 100% agree. In fact, there's an amazing book called Cosmos and Psychology by Richard Tarnas that, because I always thought like astrology was woo-woo, like growing up reading Cosmo magazine, but I read that book and I decided to pursue astrology training with him, and he just blew my mind that, to me, personal growth, spirituality, witchcraft, psychology, our own, like, I think like astrology is the common thread that can weave them all together in a really important way.
Joanne, you have not been
Thank
able,
you.
I don't know if you're able to speak as yet, like Joanne?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Did you have a question?
No. I said, would you like to add anything else to that?
Well,
because we lost you there for a bit, we wanted to have you in part of the conversation.
Well, in regards to some of the past things that you were discussing, I think stereotyping plays a huge role in how people perceive labels. As somebody that's worked with autistic and neurodivergent populations for 18 years, if you count my daughter, a lot of labeling is based on misinformation and the lack of finding credible data and being educated on what something really is. I tend to disagree a little bit with Phoenix, and I love you to death, and I mean it with the utmost respect. But when I work with people that have TBI, traumatic brain injury, the physical brain does play a part in mental health as well. If you have an injury to your brain, it's not, traditional therapy is not going to work for you. I also use a lot of mindful practices with the people I work with, such as meditation, card of the day. I find that journaling is a good way to help them to notice patterns and use tarot spreads or whatever spirituality they use. I encourage people to do Tai Chi because trauma hides in your body, not just in your brain. How does your body feel when something's happening? Sometimes you might not be thinking it here, but you're feeling it in your gut, like something's off with this situation and it triggers you. So, but I do incorporate, spirituality with those who, I encourage it because I think your spirituality plays a big role, whether it's Native American, whether it's witchcraft. I think that needs to be a part of connecting that puzzle, mind, body, spirit. It has to be aligned and balanced. I like using Reiki, energy, things like that. So yeah, I agree that we use our magical practices can be used to help people. Absolutely. And teaching kids how to meditate and, working with adolescents, I see a lot of, they don't know how to meditate. So I created these videos called 20 Seconds of Zen because a lot of times kids with ADHD, their attention span, they don't want to sit through a meditation. So I go around when I hike and I take 20-second videos and I call it 20 seconds of Zen, which is for them when they're feeling triggered or having a problem, they can sit down and for 20 seconds listen to some ocean waves or a waterfall or something like that. So those are some techniques of my spiritual practices that I incorporate, because to me, to be at peace is to go out in nature and connect with the earth and ground and center. So
Okay, Christina.
I feel, yes,
Thank you.
holistic and natural and spiritual methods and magical methods are really important and empowering, but I feel obligated, I'm sure some of us feel the same way, to mention that there is nothing wrong if you need a pharmacological intervention or a medicine to help you get through something, because many times witchcraft and natural medicine intersect, and some people have taboo or stigma about receiving mental health medication. Oh, I can use an herb, or I don't need anything. Where, especially with men, like I have some male clients that, oh, I don't want a medicine, I'll suffer, pretty much is what they're saying. So sometimes we do need a medication to help us get through something until we build up our toolbox with our coping skills. And sometimes we need medications longer. So I think if we're going to normalize receiving help for mental health and these magical tools, we also need to normalize that it is okay to receive all different sorts of medicines, whether it's Western medicine or Eastern or magical medicine, and they're all equally valid.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
So did one of the other things we kind of going to segue into is, as well, is to discerning what is belief in magic and what is illusion or delusion. Like what, some people would need that. So yeah. Okay. So the floor is open for you guys to kind of interject with that.
I say this with lots of love. This is like my motto. There's a fine line between psychic and psycho. Very line. Like when I left traditional Western medicine and moved into more spirituality, witchcraft, mental health, I had like culture shock, because I found people many times had more mental health problems in the world of spirituality and personal growth than in a mental hospital.
Yeah.
So that's where I think like some of us can help weed people out. Like, are you having a biochemical experience? Are you having a mystical experience? Are you having a spiritual experience? Are you grounded in reality? Like, what's really going on here?
Yeah.
It's a very fine line, and it's perception. It's like the lens that we're approaching their symptoms with. So, woo.
Yeah.
It's a big topic.
I think that. Go ahead. Who's speaking?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I think that we've all seen people who, push the magic too far, right? Like they don't, like the grounded in reality, I think is a really key thing. It's like they stay in that headspace and they don't have the ability to come back, as it were.
Yeah. Because we've been, I think because we're people who are witches or in that kind of genre, or spirituality, when we, in some ways, we could kind of discern faster what's real, what's delusion, what's illusion, and all the different things, as opposed to a traditional therapist. And because they will think of it in a particular way, and we're like, okay, you're not grounded, you're not there. Something is totally not ready for you, or you're not ready for it in some way. We need to find a way to have you kind of come off that train that you're on and fit some reality back in there for you. And a lot of times they don't want to. They literally don't want to. And until they're ready to do it, you can't force them to do it. Okay, we've got some hands up. Christina, go ahead.
Oh, I think that when it comes to the discussion about magical beliefs, psychosis, delusions, illusions, it's important to be very deliberate about how we talk about it, because reality is so finicky, and it really is just held together by the agreements that we make. And in order to be seen as, how we view someone as psychotic or with psychosis, like, we just need to stop making some very interesting agreements with other people around us, and now we look like that. So we got to be deliberate with the conversation. And then the other part is we are conditioned to look at this particular topic in a specific way, because it hasn't always been the case that psychosis or schizophrenia or what have you was such a painful thing for someone to have to be living with, right? Like psychosis historically was a mark of being touched by the divine.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a place in society for people who had that kind of touch. They were supported, they had a purpose, and they served a function. And that is not something that we allow with people who appear to be touched in this way.
Mhm.
But that's
Very
like the perception, right? I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever seen the article or the book going around that says when a shaman goes into the mental hospital, what does he see? So it's really all just perception. But I think like we numb people, we label them, we tell them there's something wrong with them, and we don't nurture these amazing things that might be going on. Because yeah, what you're talking about is like a psychological, psychosocial death and rebirth. And in the past, this would be the shaman or the medicine person of the tribe. So like where did these thoughts and these beliefs and these behaviors become pathologicalized? Like when did they become abnormal? Is
Colonialism.
colonialism.
Well, I think we can bring this back into the circle of empowerment, although colonialism is such a good point. I don't want to stray too far from that. But the social work thing is always that person is the expert of their own story. And I think that when we do put that in perspective, right? If someone lives in a mystical community in upstate New York, the reality that they choose to or that they need to live in is going to be very different than someone who's on a subway in Manhattan, or someone who wants to,
Right.
Teach school children versus someone who wants to be a professional tarot reader. So I think at least for me personally, as I develop my practice, it really is about centering the person, centering the client, and what their needs and their desires and their priorities are. Whether this is something that is interfering with their ability to do their occupation that they want to do, if it's problematic in ways that are interfering with, say, their family life or their love life or something like that, versus something that's not really causing any distress for them or really for anybody else in their life.
Excellent
Well, I
point.
don't know. I think you got to look at it in context too. Like she said, everybody's different. And, people that do actually have personality disorders, such as narcissistic personality disorder or dissociative disorder, these are very real things. And we want to make sure that it doesn't get minimized, because these people, they lose periods of time in their life. They're scared, they're terrified. So you really have to take it on a case by case thing. And if you're not sure, you need to find somebody who is sure, and that's the thing. The good thing about being a witch is you have a better chance of discerning which is which, obviously, but
I,
Right,
I,
Christina?
I think we can, like, I'm so excited for the group that's here today, like just being open-minded therapists and counselors and social workers with a witchy background, because and that's something I specialize in. All my clients are psychics and mediums and light workers and witches, because they can talk to me about this sort of stuff without being judged. So I know that's a resource. We're working for the Wiccan Family Temple is putting a magical therapists, or at least therapists who are open-minded to magical ideas. So just having therapists and counselors open to magical ideas and that are going to judge you and think you're odd or weird or strange and automatically label you, that will help you kind of navigate what's really going on.
As you mentioned that, one of the things I do have to let you guys know, it's interesting that the people that I work with or counsel with, not one of them are witches, not a one. And they all came to me through whatever means that they found me. And to them, they find more help with me than with their traditional therapists and all of that. They still go to that because they're forced to do that, but they actually choose to work with me instead because they see results better that way. And I'm open-minded to other things, and not one of them are in any way pagan at all.
And that's really interesting. I'm going to do a quick time check just to let everybody know we're just 10 minutes to the top of the hour. Phoenix and Christina, I know you both had comments right now. Go ahead. Who wants to go first? Christina?
I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
comment that that doesn't surprise me. I think like with Western medicine, people are disenfranchised. They can't get access to certain services, or they've been failed by traditional counseling in some way, shape, or form. So they're looking for something else, especially something like witchcraft or paganism that's empowering. And I just want to comment that, like when we were talking about magical things, some of the most like I've had clients say readings were more powerful, like intuitive readings, tarot readings, than years of counseling. And I've had a number of clients who've experienced grief and loss refer them to a medium, and they said that was more powerful talking to a medium than years and years and years of counseling. So I think there's a lot of value in these alternative magical modalities.
Right.
Yeah. Phoenix.
The thing that I do want to bring up is the ability to build a trusting, authentic relationship with someone who is seeking services or help is essential for our ability to do our job. And unfortunately, a lot of the traditional training that therapists go through does not do a great job at helping them build that authentic rapport that makes talking about these things safe. And so sometimes it has to be a degree of personal disclosure on the part of the provider, the therapist. It's like, hey, you know what? Like, listen, we jive with the astral plane here. It's okay. You can talk about what you need.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we all know a little witch doctor here or there, what have you. But like, so that becomes like a technique. But what really, really needs to happen is modern therapists, healthcare workers need to know how to and learn how to keep it 100. And they need to learn how to talk to people on many different levels, because our degrees cannot necessarily be the thing that makes us the expert. Our ability to rely on the people who are relying on us is what makes us the best practitioners. And tapping into like the wisdom that they bring to us and helping them just maximize that and notice that strength is really the effective thing to do. And we can't shut somebody down or make the atmosphere unsafe for them to be themselves, because that self is not going to heal in our presence.
Right.
True.
Right. Joanne?
Joanne.
Working with adolescents, I agree with Phoenix. The one thing I hear the most is that nobody listens or actively listens to what they're saying. And that's why they come to me a lot, just on their own. They find me and they sit down and they talk to me because they know I'm a safe space. They know I'm not going to judge, and they know I'm going to guide them in the right direction, whether that be, this is above my head, I think you should see this, or you might need this, or to just listen and and validate their trauma. Active listening is so important in building that relationship, because if they don't trust you, they're not going to talk. And that's what I hear the most from the age group from 12 to 22. I don't like it that you're like a therapist, but you're not. You talk to me. And that's the biggest thing that I hear.
Right.
That's
So
huge.
I agree with
You
Phoenix.
know what? One of the things I have to add additionally with that, keeping in mind the time quickly, one of the things is that as Joanne is saying that, I'm kind of listening to how, like I didn't put myself out saying there that I'm counseling, or all of you guys that related all the different things that you were taught, part of that should be and I'm a witch, or I'm pagan, or whatever it is, because these people that I counsel hunted me down. The words they used were, "Oh no, we hunted you down. We hunted you." And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? So there has to be a reason they're trying to find people who has the witch behind it or the pagan behind it, so that they can feel like they have an open mind or someone that will listen to them. So that's part of your degree and your witchcraft or your whatever it is, that kind of label, adding to it, to that list of litany of qualifications. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Christina.
Really quickly, I know because of time, I think we need two things. I think we need more people in the subculture, whatever you want to call this, to pursue training. And we need people who are licensed therapists and so forth to expand their mind and get continuing education and go out there and be like, what is this all about? What are alternative spiritual beliefs? What is queer? What is, different minority populations? How do I work with them? Because to me, the two keys to healing are self-awareness and becoming your authentic self. And you can't do that if you don't have a therapist who's non-judgmental, compassionate, and understanding.
Beautiful. I want to chime in on all of this as a reader, and part of the things, one of my responsibilities is having my, I'm going to say, my resource team, or the team of people I can hand clients off to when the scope of our discussion or what we're dealing with or the issue they're coming to me for is beyond my capacity. I'm a reader. I'm not a licensed therapist. Okay. So it is hugely important for me to know that I have community of folk like
Yay!
you
Yeah,
that I can reach out to, right? This is important. And building those bridges between licensed therapists, or from social work team, from youth to aged. Okay, my partner's dealing with family and all the scope of aging population. It's a huge thing. I am really grateful for that, and I think we need to build those resources and share that. Last
yeah.
question for the night, if you all wouldn't mind.
Actually, that
We have a
last
couple.
question, I don't think that
We,
question, the next question is really huge. So
it's
what I'm
massive.
thinking is, yeah, it's that is a really huge topic. So I think what we would mention is we have Christina and Joanne that is going to be forming, and I believe hopefully Phoenix might join them on a mental health Monday. Of they're going to have shows of 15 minutes where they're able to talk to you about different mental health topics based off of what you just heard them all speak about there. And those are shows that we have coming up shortly that I think
Hmm.
you guys will enjoy and be able to get a lot from to help in the mental health community, so that way it's we giving them this thing that they know that something's coming that will help them along the way. So they're calling it Mental Health Mondays, and like I said, hopefully Phoenix will join them on that day, in the sense of like with different shows regarding that.
Yeah.
And other shows that we have coming up that we think that would be very beneficial to the community at large. So and then Joanne could then bring up that wonderful topic and give it the justice that it deserves,
Yes.
and cover it in the manner that it should be, because we're not going to be able to knock that out and even
Yeah.
in this
We have
time.
the,
um
like the last panel we had on racism within the community. This mental health within the community is another one that should be more than just one episode.
yeah,
We
yeah,
need to
so we
we
might
need to
have to do a part
revisit this
two.
panel. Exactly.
Yeah,
It's excellent work.
yeah.
Um,
And again, we want
Definitely.
to thank all of you guys for being here with us and stepping up to do this with us. I mean, literally, Jerry was traveling Manhattan with her phone trying to be
Yes.
in on this because she wanted to be so present with this. And all of you that took the time out to be here with us, and we wanted people to know that there are resources,
Yeah.
whether it's you guys having your Mental Health Monday, or being able that they can have access to all of this. And now we have Zoom and all these different things they can do it via online, and
Virtually.
that way they can get the help they need, because like you said, there's not just where you live but other places people are, they're on long waiting lists, so it's good to
Yes.
have all of these resources. All right, and thank you
Absolutely.
all very much for being with us.
And thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you for
Oh
chiming in and
yes,
saying hello and blessings. We really appreciate you joining. Everyone, we will be back next Friday. And who is our guest next Friday, Star?
Daryl McKinney, and he is our resident, with his own show of Daryl McKinney, the Pagan Ninja. So he's going to be giving you tips and tricks on how to survive, whether you're a child to an adult, whatever gender you are, just straight up tips for survival. Hurt the person
Perfect.
really badly and get out. And right, he's right to the point. He's not joking. This is what he teaches. So we have all these different wonderful shows that's coming up, whether it's herbal medicine, magical herbal, all the different things we've got planned for you guys ahead on the Magickal Witchy TV channel.
Yeah.
So look
Yes.
forward to all of this with you guys. And again, what is it, Rhonda? Don't forget to,
Like and subscribe.
yes, to
We
us, whether it's
appreciate
here,
you all
YouTube,
so
wherever it is.
much.
Yay.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
joining
all of
us,
you. You guys are so wonderful. Thank you for all of what you've said.
and we'll see you next week. Have a
Yes.
great week, everyone.
Take care. Bye
Bye.
bye.